Lovely. Hello, good people. I love that it's so intimate, but I am foreshadowing. I'm almost seeing that more people will watch the recording than we might have in the room. But let's see. Thank you all for being here, for making the time on this very cold Johannesburg uh, early evening. And today I'm so excited because this is the first liberatory conversation where I'm not hosting. I am so happy. The host today will be Sinethemba Mtshali, who is an ALH Hub member and a fantastic human who will introduce themselves. But she does a whole lot of work in tech startups with a leaning or yeah, a politic of creating work opportunities for the youth that honor and see yeah that honor who they are as laborers and that is also ensuring that they have a livable wage. Right. If I missed anything, don't know. Yeah, you are more than welcome to add. And the second speaker is Arnold Sibanda. Um, yeah, African literature champion, the Johannesburg King, low-key mayor or literature mayor. Ne?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so they will be speaking on Xenoconomics as a field of study that looks at the strategies, mechanisms, methods of economic participation by migrants in Southern Africa. So yeah, like I said, I'm not hosting. This is probably the last time you all will see my face and hear my voice. So yeah, take it away. Thank you, Arnold and Sinethemba for offering your knowledge
For
perspective
service
in community.
in community. Okay.
Yes.
No, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. I'm excited. I'm waiting to get started. Yeah. My name is Arnold. I'm the director of Black City Culture, which is a Pan-African bookshop. We also sell vinyls. We've got musical archives, art, and everything else, everything in between. Then I'm also the director of Black Positivity Project, which is a non-profit organization, the design research organization. We focus on Black males, mental health, and literature. Yeah, in a nutshell, amongst other things. Yes. So yeah, I'm very excited about the conversation. I think we can get started.
Okay.
So Xenoconomics, I came across it actually when I bought this book here. So I bought this book here by uh, Masala, So I was reading through this book and I resonated with the book because I myself, I was born in Zim and I came here when I was 10. Yeah. But so it resonated with me. And my dad, he came here as well in 1993. He came from Zim to here, and the stories he told me when regarding his journey from Zim to here. I mean, they're very interesting because he was telling me they walked from Bulawayo to Beitbridge. They were hitchhiking, basically, they were hitchhiking. When they got here, his first job, he was a security guard. Then he worked himself up. He built his own security company. But his initial job here, he worked as a security guard. He had no qualifications, no papers whatsoever. So he came here because he thought this place will have better opportunities for me and my family. Yeah, so yeah. So I think we have to first start by defining what xenoeconomics is, Basically, according to Dr. Mimi, it looks at economic strategies migrant entrepreneurs and creatives use, to survive and adapt in uh, in in the South African economy or wherever they might be. It's ways they build their businesses, it's ways they navigate around uh, the economy in that said country. Then obviously it's derived from xenophobia. Which basically we know what xenophobia is, which means resentment, hatred, or fear of foreign nationals. you know. But one interesting thing I saw was when it comes to xenophobia that it's mostly associated with the citizens of lower class. It doesn't necessarily affect those of higher class. So I saw what can a certain level of classism when it comes to xenophobia, you know, which which are which I think it's due to lack of uh, understanding or knowledge. And some Pan-Africanists can say it's self-hatred. They can push it in that direction as well. So yeah. So when I dive deeper into it, so she further looks at how different groups of entrepreneurs survive in South Africa, how they come into the country and they set up their businesses and some of the stigmas around that, and how they're perceived. Because more than anything, it's how people perceive foreign nationals, those stereotypes, because xenophobia can then manifest itself in many ways. It can manifest itself economically, socially, financially, sometimes even spiritually. I remember myself when I was applying for a bank loan at Nedbank, when they saw my ID, because it's written on my ID, I've got a Zimbabwean ID, but it says there that I'm a permanent resident here, but I'm born in Zim. I got it was so uncomfortable because the lady immediately when she saw that, I think there was some level of suspicion, you know, uh, from my end. It was very uncomfortable that I had to escalate the matter. But yeah, so she further says that it then manifests itself economically, which is what we're looking at today, but also it can manifest itself financially, spiritually, and so forth, Um, then an interesting point there is that tourists, for some reason, don't receive the same treatment as migrants, you know, and that can be because uh, migrants is our economic contribution is not taken seriously, or people don't think it's that of a significant nature, which is not true because I think migrants really do contribute to the economy, um, which should be taken into account. I mean, when we purchase things, VAT, it's a form of contribution. Some do pay for the housing, they do trade in South Africa, business to business, so forth. Yeah. Yeah, I think Sinethemba
Yeah.
will brought in.
Yeah, on that note, Arnold, I was just thinking, just listening to your story that even just reading about what's happening in the news, we speak about expats and we give them that like, dignity that, oh, they came into this country and they're bringing value into this country. But when we look at migrants, we put them because they're in a lower financial class, then they're not adding value, any economic value. And that is a big part of today's conversation that I do want us to really delve into is why is that the case? If we're speaking about liberation, we're speaking about how we are all contributing to one another as humans, especially Africans on the African continent. Um, why do we then place these barriers between us? Because it's only nice, like you're saying, when it's tourists and expats, but the perception of migrants is one of they're stealing from us in a way. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's a thing of it comes to us versus them, which we can further. I mean, us in a form that, let's say, for the host country or the host citizens, we feel like we might be losing our identity, that people are stealing our resources, in a way, yeah. I mean, I don't know if we can equate it to racism in a way, because there's a level of superiority, and
Mm,
entitlement that because and the human element goes away because at the end of
mm,
the day we're all humans, the human element goes away, that it becomes us versus them. And soon as we look at things in that way, we close the door for dialogue, and how we can coexist. As soon as you think you're superior to someone else,
mm,
that they they have lesser human rights than you, merely because
Mm,
they are a citizen of a country, then it closes the door for any constructive dialogue. You know,
mm.
yeah, I think there's classism. One thing
Yes.
about xenophobia, there's a certain level of classism.
Mm.
Yeah,
No, I was actually, going on Instagram, regular searches, and I came across this fun Fanon quote, right? And it says that the people come to understand that wealth is not the fruit of labor, but the result of organized and protected robbery. And it's from the wretched of the earth. And if we think about it like that these limited resources that we've convince ourselves there's only so many resources and we should keep them for ourselves are even just a fallacy on its own because these are systems that have been put in place to oppress us and to separate us and divide us. Therefore, if we're thinking about decolonization and we're thinking about liberation, we have to unlearn this othering, which is what you're saying, this discrimination, this superiority over other people for
yes,
whatever reason, whether it's race, ethnicity, class, whatever it is. The basis is that we can't other people and consider ourselves superior to them and thus treat them, with disdain. So,
100%.
yeah.
100%. And another thing, man, is I mean, the reason why we have migrants in the first place, in this context per se, it's economically. So we get an entrepreneur, basically someone who identifies an opportunity, an economic or social economic to make money or change. You know, it can be anyone who identifies as opportunities.
Mm,
And then what separates other creators or entrepreneurs is the drive and the desire to make that change, an economic change, to build something, the desire, so which then goes back to that. I think sometimes it's due to lack of education, you know,
mm.
lack of education and empowerment. Because Dr. Mimi does emphasize on the importance of empowerment, empowering people from an educational point of view, and the type of education she does speak briefly on that, which I think is one thing. If we had to find ways to to resolve such issues, education should be one pillar, and another thing should be the type of education. You know,
Yes, considering even just the language in which we are speaking in, it's not lost on us that we are speaking English and we're using big words, right? And we were just speaking about the classism and how the migrants that are facing the most, or having the hardest time are those in lower classes. And already we're the ones having these discussions in our corners of utopia when these discussions are supposed to be traveling through and going further into the communities where migrants are working and they have their businesses and their customers who are the host country citizens are there. And I actually just want to open it up to the rest of the people on the call. Are there any experiences or examples that you've noticed in terms of the patterns of migrants groups, maybe that you are aware of, and how have you interacted with them? What has your, relationship been toward them? Anyone can go.
Sinethemba, do you mean relationship to migrant entrepreneurs, or is it more of a general?
I think maybe in general, let's start off in general and then we can, go to the economic part of it.
Yeah. Uh,
Hmm.
one half of, well, yeah, half of my family is, well, could be considered migrants, if more of them actually moved to South Africa, but they are very much comfortable in Botswana. So whenever I'm that side, I'm the migrant, and whenever they are this side, well, not migrants, but yeah, when I'm that side, I am the foreigner. When they are this side, and they are foreigners. I I haven't really brought a lens of these people are different from myself. I think maybe because of just knowing my family history and how we ended up, half of us ended up in South Africa and the other half stayed in Botswana. So for me, it's like my interactions with uh, people who are not necessarily South African citizens is almost the same as my interactions with people who could, according to Home Affairs, are South African citizens. So yeah, I would say that in migrant groups, I am there just with them, with us as one of the ones. And perhaps I was lucky or not to be born in this country and be given or be bestowed citizenship as we know it. Anyone
Oh, I
else
think
has
we're
reflections?
losing you in a
Oh
little
no,
thing.
you guys lost me.
Oh, yeah, at the
Yes,
end
yes.
there,
We
but we
lost you
got
at
your
the end.
family.
Yeah, you got that. Even me, yeah, Dudula might just come to my door and say,
Yes.
yeah, you are suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why I'm asking specifically personally first, because um no man is an island, right? When we speak about the history of our families, especially as Africans, there's always, a mix somewhere.
Mm.
And for me specifically, even I'm Zulu, so from KZN. So a lot of people, when I introduce myself, I'm saying I'm Zulu, they're like, yo, and I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I'm the cool one, 'cause I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? But the fact that I have to like preface that is problematic to me, right? And those are the kinds of things that when we are looking at migrants and interacting with migrant entrepreneurs, it's also because people who understand that there is a mix of nationalities in their families, it becomes easier for them to interact with migrant businesses, right? Whereas if you are so secluded in your own culture, understanding people, it becomes hard to leave that bubble. And in the South African context, I think it takes an unlearning for us to go out of our way to interact with people that are not from this country, that have a different country of origin but live here now. So I think that was the main reason, to have a personal understanding. And I think that's really great that you shared that, because when we also go, we're foreigners when we go on that side, you know and I would hope we get to a place where that isn't the case, where wherever we are on the continent, we are home, and that is what we are working towards, of course, in these conversations. I don't know if there's anyone else who'd like to share maybe a personal story, or maybe, yeah, I see videos popping up.
I I would like to share, although I didn't hear the question. Like if you could repeat the question.
No problem. I was just saying, in your experience, are there any examples or patterns or that you've seen when it comes to interacting with migrants in your personal life? So people maybe who are not from this country, just what are your experiences?
Okay. So I mean, you can see from my name, I'm not South African. But I do live here and I'm
My
married to
sister, my hope.
um yes. I mean, I like to think of myself as an African or um an East African. I'm from Uganda, but I've been living here for I think 18 years. And I'm married to a South African. But I think my my experience is kind of like um so I the first time I got here, I thought that South Africans were some of the most friendly Africans that I've ever met. And I still think that. And Arnold, you were talking about classism. I think that the thing about classism is not only in who gets to be who gets to experience xenophobia, but also who gets to be defined as xenophobic. Because if you look at um, middle class, skilled people that come to South Africa, or middle class South Africans rather, they don't necessarily participate in the conversation. And I think that as people who are having these conversations, I think we also need to be aware that it surely cannot be that it's poor people who are xenophobic. So the fact that, and this is a conversation about economics, we need to take it further than, oh, South Africans think we're taking their jobs, blah, 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 which is true. And I think that we need to be honest, because obviously these are issues of economics. So economics is my thing. So you would have to, I get very excited. Um, and I think um, in the kind of capitalist society, obviously the poor are left with like the bottom, the crumbs, the tiny little whatever. So it makes sense that it is poor people who feel like they're losing out, because more skilled people, wealthier people don't ever feel like first of all, they can afford private healthcare. Their jobs are not threatened. In fact, their jobs are quite secure, right? Um, and we know that when it comes to that kind of level of hiring, then there are processes that companies have to take. But when it's at the bottom and we're looking at maybe domestic workers, like people in the service industry or whatever, which I used to be in, by the way, and I was a what you call this thing? I was a waitress at some point, and many of us were foreigners doing that work because it was so poorly paid, and it's poorly paid because they can exploit. So we have to also have that conversation beyond like the knee-jerk reaction. How can we kind of rather than fight with each other, also understand where the other person is coming from? Because if there are so many people to exploit, obviously business is going to exploit them. And the people who are being exploited are not going to say, okay, well, I can't take this job. I mean, they do need the job, but it means that maybe service staff cannot people in the service industry, in these lower paid, lower skilled industries, cannot actually unionize, cannot come together to agitate for better wages. So for me, I get very frustrated with the conversation, because I feel it's like operating in such a polarized manner. It's like this side likes migrants and this side doesn't, but it's not really about that, because I have felt welcomed here, and I have, at some point I was an asylum seeker. I have now a permanent residency. I'm now a permanent resident, but I have gone through all of these various spaces that people will often say, oh, this space is so xenophobic, and yet I find humanity in people there as a foreigner. And I think that we also, like, I find that Africans in general, we're all xenophobic. So can we also stop acting like South Africa is an exception here? Everybody is xenophobic. And I think in order to have this conversation of how we can be like kumbaya in a relationship, we need to be honest about what is the cause of this stuff, and how do we then come together to find solutions, because you cannot go into any other African country as well and get a job or whatever. So, and it feels like you have to take these sides that don't make any sense, because for me, I feel like, how is it that it's poor people who are xenophobic? Like, that doesn't make sense. Okay, we'll stop now.
Thank you. That is such a great perspective. Such a great perspective. I was actually gonna say, Arnold, we spoke about this when preparing. I was actually led right into one of the points that you wanted to make. So yes, Arnold.
Yes. I just want to not clarify, but maybe elaborate on the classism point that the doctor was raising in a book. You know, she's not saying that rich people can be people of upper class or middle class can be xenophobic. She was merely saying you mostly find it uh, within the lower class, within the lower class, which is it's more intense. There's levels of aggression, you know. At maybe at middle class or upper class, it might be from an exploitative point of view. Like I know most Zimbabweans, they work in the hospitality industry because of uh because it's cheap labor, and they want to make ends to they want to just make money. And I can tell you, most of them that work in that space, they've built houses back home because there's no credit facility in Zimbabwe. There's no credit. You can't get credit. So everything they buy, they have to buy cash. And most of them have managed to buy houses. Some of them are driving cars, but they with the very low wages that they are getting from the hospitality industry, you know. So she wasn't saying you can't find it at your 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 upper class or higher class. She was just saying at the lower class, it's you're going to be it's aggressive, it's intense, and because of lack of education, and people trying to take advantage of poor people and putting them against each other, like the Operation Dudula. It could have been something else. It could have been Operation Educate, Operation Coexist. But because they saw it's easier to exploit poor people and to use them to push a certain narrative. So they exploit them and push them in that direction, which is what operational Dudula is. I mean, us as Africans, Ubuntu, we used to coexist. I mean, when I go to the KZN, I speak fluent Zulu, because it's it's the same language, it's the same tongue. It's literally the same tongue. Ndebele and Zulu is the same tongue. Then when I go to the Eastern Cape, I can make my way through with my Xhosa because it's the same tongue. And it's because people came in and they've taken advantage of to push their own agendas and narratives that put us against each other. It's not that as Africans we didn't coexist before. We can. But we have to be mindful of such operations like Operation Tutu Alliance, people trying to push their own agenda and use poor people uh to to settle scores, political scores, whatever the issue may be. Yes.
Certainly.
So you,
Jen, is your hand still up?
yes,
Eh,
you muted now. Yeah.
I guess on that, like, I guess what I mean about the classism of xenophobia in the definition is is not like, especially in South Africa, poor people exist in violence. So when violence is meted out against, let's say, foreigners, um, it's not so different from the violence that people live with every day. Like the violence of living in an informal settlement with no running water, no whatever. The violence that if you go to a toilet at in the evening, you might actually, you know, not make it back home because the toilet is, I don't know, a meter, what is it, a kilometer away, and it's not even a proper toilet. So I think that for me, even in understanding violence, we have to understand like what does a person lose um in living in such a violent space, and a space that is so chronically and so I don't know, like there is almost nothing to lose in harming another person. Like you have very little to lose in terms of, okay, you live next to and I'm not saying that people who are in informal settlements are even the ones doing this. I'm saying that if you are just trying to, if if your conditions of existence are quite poor, violence is not something that is so alien to you. So violating another person is not, so I can think about, if I think about violence and way it will land me, I might end up in jail, I might do whatever, blah, blah, blah. I won't want to experience that. But if a person goes to the extent of harming another person, perhaps the violence is Like I think they have been violated already. And so the violence is just a response to that violation. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense here.
Yeah, I really like that point that you're making, is that they are being violated and it's a response to that violation. We have another hand. I'm just not sure what your name is. Sorry.
Attended to.
Hi. Sorry, I
Hello.
just wanted to make a very quick add-on to
Yes, yes.
what Usisi just said before me. She's reminding me of a Sin talk I listened to that's titled The Mystery of Violence. And it's a couple of speakers, and they're trying to unpack, like, what is violence? And one of the speakers talks about, as he's thinking through violence, he talks about how within violence we have normally heard from the perpetrator. Most of the time, it is the perpetrator's account that tends to hold more weight. And even when the victim eventually speaks, at times a victim ends up speaking as if they're the perpetrator as well. And
Yes.
they keep elaborating on their point, and they get to a point where they say, at what point do we get to allow the victim a chance to voice themselves, right? Especially if the justice system also, to some degree, affords the perpetrator guidelines on how to still voice for themselves. When do we ever open up a victim? And as he was unpacking the topic, he speaks about victims as people who have been so humiliated by systems that humiliation supersedes their own understanding to the point where it evolves into violence. And I think essentially that's what Rusisi is speaking to, that especially when we're talking about things like xenophobia or even crime, right? I think crime is even just a simpler way to even look at it, just a basic petty crime. You would like to believe that ideally the person who's committing that crime, stealing a car, stealing a loaf of bread, there is something that has pushed them beyond their moral code or the collective moral code that would make them justify the act as wrong, thus not continuing with it. But the situation that they're in pushes them to the point where even our collective morals aren't enough for them to say, look, I'd rather starve again. And so they don't steal the loaf of bread. Now, if what this is saying, if you're constantly living in the cycle of everything that you're attempting to do, and you almost want to go back into maybe the South African's mindset. If as a South African, especially a lower earning South African, you are in the South Africa today of 2025, the Rainbow Nation dream didn't actually pan out for you. You are being bound to a grant system that still doesn't actually really consider your cost of living. Even if it's a system that's there to support you, it should still be a system that has some sort of humanitarian compassion to it, if I could put it that way, thus paying people amounts that are also reasonable, right? So if you've got so much already in your life that continues to remind you that, one, you're probably a hassle for the government, two, already historically you are disenfranchised, your sense of trying to hold on to certain things or justifying reasons of self-hating or hating fellow Africans who, for you, in your view, arrived and suddenly they got a job, but you're not seeing that the job that they got is the waitressing job that maybe you wouldn't take, because maybe for you, Istima Sako still says that there's a certain threshold of employment maybe or living that you won't go to, but you can justify certain things. So I think there's those finer nuances that I think we tend to overlook when we are unpacking these sort of conversations. And it's, for me, I always come back to the word humiliation. Humiliation really can be such a violent breeding ground for people, right? Because I think it makes it so much easier for us when we are humiliated to either justifying playing into the subjective role, right? And really minimizing ourselves, and in there becoming even angrier towards systems, or when we're humiliated, we will then choose another violent way of expressing ourselves. So I think my thing goes to, I think I even think of things like the TRC. How much space have we afforded South Africans internally alone to really process the sense of collective humiliation, to really process the sense of unfulfilled dreams, right? In 2025, there's still so much that's broken. How much space are we affording for those dialogues whilst we're still then dealing with these more surface issues, if I could put it that way? Um, and what would that do, right? Whether it's a formal or informal way of us creating a communal setting to nurture some sense of reconciliation against this institutional humiliation that people undergo. Like, what would that offer people? How else would they come to relate to one another? Because then, if maybe we have offered maybe South Africans this breathing room, in turn, when I come across an African who's escaping their own country's conflict, right, to come here to make better for themselves, I might be able to better to relate to their humiliation, their sense of lived experience, as opposed to feeling like they're coming to disenfranchise me in a place where I'm already disenfranchised. You already come to take where there's little bread. Now I must still make nice with you. So there's almost like that sort of dialogue that I think we never really give space to, you know?
Thank you. Sorry, we didn't get your name. And then Nolofatseng.
Oh, my name is
Siviwe.
Siviwe,
Thank you so
sorry.
much, Siviwe, for that. Really appreciate that. Nolofatseng and
Yes, let me actually put off my video so that my audio is a bit more stable. I wanted to say, I mean, in both shit, now I forgot your name. The person who spoke just before me.
yeah, Siviwe.
Siviwe, yes. Yeah, speaking back to what Siviwe shared and what Jen also shared is perhaps also how we frame our understanding of migrant labor needs to also be expanded to afford them, to afford them and see the agency that they have, because most would say, okay, the formal economy is not working for me. I am earning far below minimum wage. And so let me go into an economic structure that allows more flexibility, that allows more easy access to participation. And I think that's what will lead us back into, the high rates of migrant participation in the informal economy. Most of street vendors have taken it up to themselves, saying, okay, I'm in a foreign country. Someone is asking me to do 12 hours of hospitality work for 1,000 per day or per 12 hours. How about I have skills, trade, trade. I am trained in a trade, or I have access to certain markets that I can leverage in order for me to be self-employed and restore my dignity and my sense of agency in this foreign economy. And I think also that's how we view migrant labor is oftentimes from a disempowering perspective, saying, oh, there's that victimhood. Of course, capitalism is victimizing all of us, but I think also just the desire and the rate of moving into an informal economy is a claiming of agency. It's a claiming of, I am not gonna let the economy happen to me. I will adopt whatever strategy that I need to. And I think also that's what Dr. Mimi was sort of alluding to in her work, that the rate of migrant laborers who are saying, "Oh, I will not participate in these formal structures. I would rather be an entrepreneur and sort of carve out my own destiny in this foreign land." And we are seeing it as an actual economic structure, economic model that is being built by a lot of these migrant laborers who have taken it up to themselves to rather not to leave the formal economy and build on the informal.
Yeah. I really love
Yes, definitely, definitely. You summed up her book. That's pretty much what she was saying, you know. You pretty much summed up everything. Seeing we are running short of time, so we're going to try put everything summarize today's conversation and also come up with recommendations, what we think is the best, what we think different sectors can do. The government has a very important role to play because most of the times they are to blame for how things they are. Then they are to blame. They are to blame for how things are. Then even corporate as well, because if they paid everyone a fair salary, not based on where you're from, but based on the work and the minimum wage the government set, which we still need to fight for to be increased. We'll have different uh, conversations. Then the role also the media can play. I mean, the media is a powerful tool that we can also use in our spaces, but also the media has a very important role to play. The message they put out there, the education that's there, and what we can do in our limited spaces, Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's also in our personal interactions with these migrant businesses, are we learning from them? Are we asking them? Are we integrating with them? And I think the biggest thing here that we're speaking about is their integration into society, right? Into their host countries. And a lot of what we're speaking about is the othering, right? The division. And I like where we're going with the conversation because we're not blaming a specific people group, right, for how we've ended up, but it is the systems that have forced us into these corners and has pushed us, to now blame one another and point at each other. But now, when we are looking at these sophisticated systems that these migrant businesses have built, these are sophisticated trade routes. We call them informal, but they're very sophisticated. They work so well. And just learning from how they're able, one, to thrive in this system that is really othering them and cornering them, and that's one thing that I think is really commendable about a lot of these migrant businesses. We've seen a lot of them with the restaurants, right? Food. When we're speaking about all these, when we're importing and exporting, that's a very sophisticated thing. We speak about that a lot within the formal economy. And for us as individuals, one is to participate, and to learn. Like I like what Nicola put into the chat, that when she's at the markets, hearing about their stories, how are they bringing these goods, how are they being processed, and the fact that they're able to pool their resources, and that's what Inorofatseng is saying, that it's autonomy still. You still are gaining back that agency, that you have dignity, because within the formal economy you are not treated as such, you're not treated as human. But within this economic I would say ecosystem that you've built for yourself, you have agency. And that, I think, is something that we should participate in, because if there is a way that we can lobby corporate, we can speak to government to make sure that they are paying livable wages. One is the most important thing, but also that they are helping the migrants get the correct documentation, because we know that that limits their access to a lot of public services. So that is one way that we were also discussing. But if there are other ways that you guys are suggesting in terms of recommendations as to what we can do to uplift those who are participating in this economy, knowing what they are up against and what they're facing. See, we have more people in the chat even. We're growing towards the end.
We're growing towards the end. I mean,
There's more of me.
well, I like what Sinethemba said. I think one important thing we can do is celebrate African entrepreneurship, if we can call it that. Dedicate a specific day where we can celebrate each other's entrepreneurs, where we can learn from each other, knowledge sharing from a business and an economic perspective. I think if we can dedicate a day, just like we have Africa Day, if we can dedicate as a hub, dedicate a day where we celebrate our members from outside and our other members who are running businesses in South Africa and share knowledge, share maybe Sinethemba is a skill that I would love to use in my business, dedicate just a day, and make it an ongoing thing. Then also going forward, this is continuous work. We are going to be trying to develop other tools that we can share with everyone that we can use. Yeah.
Again, your hand is up.
Were you talking to me?
Yes.
Jen, it's
So
you
I
first.
think that I think that when it comes to some of the issues that you raised, so like there's I think somebody spoke about credit. I think it was Arnold talking about credit and something about how difficult it is to get that. I think credit is also difficult for Black South Africans, especially to get. This is one of the um of the legacies of apartheid, depending on where you live, whatever, credit is difficult to get. And then there's overregulation and this formalization. A lot of the time, formalization, certain businesses actually prefer to stay informal because the formal is so overregulated. And a lot of the regulation, I mean, government talks about township building, township businesses, whatever, but the way it's done is almost trying to create space for the checkers and the whatevers to get into the township. It's not really working with the township where it is and trying to develop the kind of entrepreneurship that is then, when you're talking about South African economics, you can never escape apartheid. And of course, a lot of the time, the Africans that we see doing businesses here have a Muslim background. Muslims have always been business people. Everywhere you go on the African continent, you find that the Muslim Africans are very much in the business space. And then we know that during apartheid, of course, Africans couldn't even run businesses. So that culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa was completely destroyed, as with other, things. So I very much am in favor of some kind of skills exchange, but we would have to go like to kind of have some kind of organization um that unites people at that level rather than this kind of polarization that is there. And I don't know how that happens because also generally people who are foreigners, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're on the African continent or whatever, they're hustlers. They're people who, they get stuff done. Nobody leaves their country by being somebody that is, afraid of just venturing into the unknown. So always you'll find that every country has the same problem where foreigners will kind of figure out a way around all of these problems so much quicker than the nationals. And I say this as it's a global thing. So I don't know whether that is a skill that people can learn because there are South Africans who go out of South Africa, whether it is to wherever, to New Zealand, whatever, they're doing businesses there. And people there say South Africans are really better to hire, better to whatever, because when you leave your home, you cannot be like, okay, I can stay with my grandmother if I don't have work. Like you have to hustle.
Exactly.
So I think some of this stuff is difficult to kind of pass on because of the nature of foreigners and how yeah, like we are tough people. I often think that you cannot say that you have grown until you've been a foreigner because it is rough being a foreigner. So you cannot, weakness is not an option.
Oh my gosh, no, soft life is not an option in that case.
No, legit. I was an illegal immigrant in Swaziland once. And I was like, oh, yeah, the fear is real. The fear is so real. But I wanted to bring our conversation to this point, and it's something that we at ALH are quite concerned with, and it's a basis of our work, and it's on economic systems change and building and amplifying economies that are other to capitalism. And what I'm hearing from the contributions that everyone is making here, and I haven't read the book, but I feel that Dr. Mimi might be speaking to this too, is that there is a strong practice of solidarity economies in other communities. You only have yourself or yourselves to. My thing is unstable happening. Is it?
Yes, they are taking just a little bit.
It's like okay, let me put off
Yeah.
the video. But as I was saying, that solidarity economies being manifested and practiced with so much intent in communities
Mm.
that are usually othered. And I say this even beyond migrant communities. As someone who grew up in Soweto, we legit have to come together to make means. There's a stockpile for food, groceries. There's a stockpile for toiletries and things that clean the house. And there's always that sense that okay, if a neighbor comes to me and knocks and says, okay, I do not have sugar for this evening's meal. Can I borrow some? And it's usually something that you give off of yourself without any hesitation. And I think that the solidarity economics of Xenoconomics is something that we can also not necessarily integrate in the broader conversations of economic systems change, but it's something that we might be missing. That this is, like you said, Sinethemba, it's an ecosystem, it's an economy, even though it's a microeconomy, and it's one that is yeah, that's dignity restoring, and it's also one that adds to the movement of capitalism shall fall. This is how in micro communities it has fallen because it has fallen in our micro economy, well, micro neighborhoods or communities, and therefore this is a model that perhaps when capitalism falls for real, that we can adopt as a people. And yeah, so I'm inspired by hearing the perspectives of everyone who has shared here. But I also I see the potential of Xenoeconomics as an alternative economic system and yeah, an alternative economic systems that well economic system that adds to the movement of economic systems change. If I say economic one more time, I will finish.
No, I really love that. That's such a great point. That's what we're working towards.
Mm.
And I think we're just gonna ask maybe for 5 minutes of everybody's time as we go over time a little bit. But I actually was just thinking about this, and I'm actually so committed to having this conversation because the more we have the conversation, the more momentum we build. And maybe, as hub members, if we are committed to having this conversation more often, again, we're working towards, the knowledge sharing, like Arnold was saying, to having a day that we dedicate time and effort to really weave this thing, because it's like as everybody's speaking, there's a new thread, there's a new layer that is there to unpack, and it's all so necessary and so important when we're speaking about liberation and we're speaking about decolonization, because there is a lot of resistance, but I think we stop at the resistance and we don't get to the creation part, to the ideation, to the what is this new world then that we want to live in, where we can coexist. And that is what we want to get to. That's the part that actually matters, And I think that's something that we can all agree maybe here, that if we want to continue the conversation, maybe our next liberatory conversation can still be around xenoeconomics, maybe a different facet of it, like we're saying, in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of economics, as Jen was saying. It also makes me excited. Love economics talk. So let's expand further on this and see where it can take us, I think. Yes.
Oh, definitely, definitely. This was a good introduction to the topic. I'm assuming most people are not familiar with economics from this perspective. We've seen it, but we were not sure it can be framed in this way, and these are some of the parts to it. So yeah, we can definitely continue. I'm for continuing the conversation, breaking it down. But we are committed to working on tools that we can use. We are committed to working on tools that we can use as a hub and for everyone at large. And yeah, definitely. My son just
Yes.
got from school.
It's Andy.
But yeah, no, and this is so amazing. Also in the chat, we're seeing people from, is it the Caribbean, guys? It's so amazing. This is like an international community.
Yes, a very micro one, but still.
Exact, but it's the nucleus. We start small and then you know? So I'm loving this. I love
Yeah.
this so much. But I think if everyone is comfortable, thank you for your time. I just want to thank everyone for being here, taking the time just to, to have these conversations and go through this. I feel like this is the work that matters truly, because once we start, it will continue. And so it seems like we're all in favor of continuing this conversation. So hopefully we will do so, and
Yes.
we will send out all the messages for everybody to join again for our next liberatory conversation.
Mm,
But thank you, Arnold. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
mm.
And there's
The
the
book
book.
is
We need to put the
online.
book.
If you want online, I think I shared the link there. We've got a few
Okay.
copies left. Yeah, a few people did purchase copies from our site, which is I'm assuming it's Hub members mostly. But yeah, thank you.
Arnold, is the ebook open source?
No, it's not. The ebook. It's not an ebook. It's a hardcover book. It comes with the. I'll find out if she has more copies. It comes with the CD as well that you can.
Oh,
That has more
I can
resources
listen
and
to.
stuff. Yeah,
Mm,
that you can listen to as well. So yeah, but I'll find
mm,
out from her if she's got more copies. Then perhaps on the next conversation, whenever you're having it, she can be part of it. She couldn't join us for this one, unfortunately.
mm. Okay.
It's
Lovely,
giving
lovely.
book club. We're a book club now because of
It's
of
coming.
Arnold.
I'm
Yeah.
happy for Hub members
Yes.
to do one.
Yay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you all as the king custodian for Liberatory Conversations. This has been life-giving. And I'm so glad that we the much of today's conversation felt like just a group of friends,
My
family.
intern.
Am I ish? No, was I breaking up?
No.
Aha, okay. Anyway, yeah, but it felt like a coming together of people who are interested in the topic at hand, but also who are open to sharing their views and feeling a safety in the space that we are co-creating here. So I really do appreciate it. And when we were dreaming up Liberatory Conversations, this is exactly what we envisioned, not necessarily one-way, presentations where some expert says this is what Xenoconomics is, and this is the only way to define it. But having, such exchanges, building our, I think I said this even yesterday, like building collective intelligence, communal knowledge that we can tap into, and it's living because here we are being alive and rediscovering, evolving our ways of looking at this specific topic, but also others. I'm very happy to have a follow-up liberatory conversation on this very on Xenoconomics, but the people will tell us.
Yes,
Let the people govern.
please.
Yeah.
Please, guys, tell us.
Let the people tell us, and we are here to further the conversation. So yeah, thank you all. We are a bit over time, but we also started late. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, thank you. Thank you from the hub, the African Liberation Hub. We have colleagues here. Soleil, thank you so much for doing the tech side, taking care of also people on chat. I am famously, I suck at multitasking. So I was meant to do the chat thing, but yeah. So thank you, Soleil. Thank you, Sinethemba. Thank you, Arnold. And thank you, like literally everyone who's been in this call and shared so freely and openly. Definitely do appreciate y'all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. It's up.
Hi, Tigala.
This was so wonderful, everyone. Thank you so much.
Nicole. So
I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I've had to
For
balance
one
reading what
full
you're
evening.
saying and reading. So I'm so glad you wrote it. So glad.
Yeah, good
Hi,
people. I'm
all.
ending the call. I'll
yes, cool.
It's
Bye.
up.